Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's dissemination event. We are thrilled to have you all join us today. Before we kick off, we will be waiting for a couple of few minutes more to allow more participants to join. However, while we wait, we would love to hear from you. So in the chat, please drop in your name, where you are joining us from today, and a self-care routine that you like to practice. I'm going to request the Dimagi team as well as our other panelists to get the ball rolling. So let's get started and say hi, everyone. So exciting to see so many amazing self-care practices. Keep this coming, everyone, and welcome to the call. All right, I think we have a good amount of people who've joined us, so let's get started. Hi, everyone. I am Tanya, and welcome to today's dissemination event. During today's session, we will be sharing learnings from the two recently concluded pilots, which were led by our partner organizations, Africa Youth Growth Foundation, and Partners in Health. They led this pilot on a digital tool, which was designed and developed by Dimagi on its flagship product known as CommCare. This application is known as the companion application. The purpose of this tool was to take the frontline workers through a resilience journey to provide them the access to resilience building tools in low and middle income countries. At the core of this, there is a belief that by providing frontline workers the access to tools that helps them build resilience, we will be able to support them to overcome their workplace stressors as well as prevent burnout, with an aim to help them improve their overall well-being, or also cater to better job quality and their outcomes as service providers. Now let's kick this off by giving a warm shout out and extending a hearty welcome to our esteemed partners who made this incredible journey possible. And before we dive into the heart of today's presentation, I would like to take a moment to introduce each of our partner organizations and highlight the pivotal roles that they played during the pilot implementation. To start with, I would like to introduce the Dimagi team members. Today on the call, we have Charles, Liliana, Anna, and myself joining from the Dimagi team. For Dimagi, this journey started when we joined the community of practice established by Johnson & Johnson Center for Health Worker Innovation that we now know as the Resilience Collaborative. Dimagi, along with other organizations, engaged in the process of adapting and testing a set of messages that were intended to build resilience skills in frontline workers in low and middle income countries. And the outcome of this initiative was the Resilience Message Program, which was published by the J&J Foundation. The Resilience Message Program is the heart and soul of the companion application, which was designed by Dimagi on CommCare. Dimagi specifically also oversaw the pilot implementations and provided technical as well as implementation support to our pilot organizations. Moving on, we would like to thank the Johnson & Johnson Center for Health Worker Innovation for their support in making this application, as well as the pilot implementations, a reality. They have played the role of our primary thought partner in this journey, and we welcome Sarah and Jamila on the call today. Next up, we have the team from Africa Youth Road Foundation, Joe and Jafar joining us. The AYGF team led the pilot in Nigeria with a set of 20 health workers in the Niger state. Lastly, from our pilot organizations, we have Anna, Jonathan, and Christina join us, who led the pilot in Chiapas, Mexico, with 20 health workers. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome the team from George Institute for Global Health, Varadharajan and Ashish, who are the new hosts for the Resilience Collaborative community. Talking about today's agenda, we will start the session with some exciting updates from the TRC that will be presented by the J&J team. We will then dive into the heart of the presentation with providing everyone an overview of how the pilots were set up, what were the outcomes of the pilot, before we hand it over to the representatives from Africa Youth Road Foundation and Partners in Health, who will be sharing their learnings from the pilots. We will then switch gears and talk briefly about how the learnings from these pilots have shaped our thinking about improving the design of the application. We will then have a Q&A round and wrap up with some important TRC updates. We would like to make sure that this session is engaging and interactive, and for this purpose, please feel free to use the Zoom chat to share in your introductions. Please drop in your name, where you're joining us from, and a self-care routine that you like to practice. Also, as you go through the presentation, if you would like to share your thoughts, reflections, any virtual high fives, please feel free to use the Zoom chat. We have also allotted 10 minutes in this presentation to go through any questions that the audience has. And specifically, please feel free to drop in your questions in the Q&A window. And we will have a moderated Q&A block towards the end of the presentation. This is to ensure that all our presenters get sufficient time to present their learnings. In case there are questions that remain unanswered, or if you would like to know more, we would be happy to have a follow-up via email at wellme@dimagi.com. Awesome. With this, I would like to now invite Sarah from the J&J team to share some exciting TRC announcements.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And I'll keep this brief because I really want to make sure we make enough time available for the real stars of the show today. But just some quick announcements on the Resilience Collaborative. So first and foremost, I'm so pleased on behalf of the J&J Foundation to announce the wonderful Ashish and Vadu who are on the call, but who are colleagues from the George Institute of Global Health. And they are officially the new Resilience Collaborative host. It was quite a long process for application and sourcing. So we had lots of conversations back and forth, and we know that they are the perfect fit for really moving the collaborative to the next phase. And we know they're great partners in terms of evidence generation as well, which we know is much needed in this field, hence this dissemination event today. I will say that the GIGH team recently announced a role for a dedicated community manager, also extremely exciting because we saw that was a huge gap previously. So again, a real thumbs up in terms of moving the community forward in its evolution. As always, we are so very keen to connect with the Resilience Collaborative community. And so we will be reaching out with some upcoming events now that we have formally announced that we have GIGH as the new host. So stay tuned for that. And also reinforcing that we have spent a lot of time reflecting on what has, and more importantly, what has not been working in the community, given it's new and new in terms of maturity. So we're really looking forward to evolving the community with the existing members and hopefully new members moving forward. Final point that isn't on this slide, we might be reaching out for additional ways to sign up to the new community as hosted by the George Institute of Global Health. So stay tuned for that too. Thanks, Tanya, for giving us some time this morning on that.
Thank you, Sarah. Really exciting updates, and we congratulate the team at GIGH for their new role and looking forward to see how the community shapes up. Awesome. With this, we'll get started with today's presentation by giving everyone an overview of the companion application as well as how the pilot was set up. In 2021, the community of practice established by the J&J Foundation, which is the Resilience Collaborative, published a toolkit which included a set of 82 messages that were intended to build resilience of frontline workers in low and middle income countries. These set of 82 messages were centered around the 5 core behaviors and 2 supporting behaviors that were intended to build resilience. An example of these behaviors were connecting to purpose, connecting to self, practicing mindfulness and relaxation, stress management, etc. The 82 messages were paced out in a way that they began with small and easy steps that one could take to combat their stress, leading up to more challenging personal growth items. Once those messages were available, Dimagi took those messages and developed a digital solution on CommCare, which we now know as the companion application. The companion application was designed to take the health workers through a self-guided journey, which would take them through the resilience message program at their own pace. These messages were adapted by our pilot organization to make sure that they were contextualized to the specific socioeconomic as well as cultural context of the target audience where this application was deployed. The companion application, like I mentioned, included 82 messages, which were delivered over approximately 7 months. Out of these 82 messages, the first message that we see in the toolkit is an introductory message, which basically orients the users to the program, sharing insights about how the program will benefit them, how they can make the most of this program, and also gives them an overview of what they can expect in the coming months. In order to foster better content absorption, the rest of the 81 messages were delivered by the companion app on a weekly basis, where each week the users received 3 messages. Apart from getting access to the resilience messages, on a monthly basis, the health workers were also prompted to fill a monthly reflection form, which basically gauged their engagement with resilience building behaviors, as well as their resilience and well-being levels, which were assessed using validated measures, which were the Brief Resilience Scale and the WHO-5 Well-being Index. The application also used interactive nudges, such as push notifications. So whenever there was newly available content for the week, the application would put out a pop-up notifications that would tell the user that there was new content available. To foster engagement, we also rewarded completion badges whenever the user completed a set of messages for the week. The application also included other visual cues to foster smooth user experience. In 2022, with J&J support, we onboarded 3 organizations: Africa Youth Growth Foundation, Partners in Health, and Institute of Healthcare Improvement, to pilot this application in Nigeria, Mexico, and Brazil. The objective of these pilots was to understand the success of app uptake, the usability of the application, the completion of the resilience message program, and its overall impact on the resilience and well-being levels. We also wanted to use these pilots to test the effectiveness of delivering resilience building training to frontline workers via a digital tool and understand the implementation insights that could form the scale-up of such digital interventions. We have recently wrapped up the pilots in Nigeria and Mexico, and this session will be focused on understanding the learnings from these 2 pilots, and we are at the cusp of launching the 3rd pilot in Brazil. Now let's talk about how the pilots were structured. Each of the pilots started with a baseline where, before the health workers got onboarded to the companion application, the organizations conducted a baseline survey to gauge the initial levels of resilience and well-being amongst the health workers. As mentioned before, In order to assess resilience and well-being, we used validated scales such as the Brief Resilience Scale and the WHO-5 Well-being Index. Once the baseline was completed, the organizations rolled out the application to the users, where they would receive 3 messages per week, and on a monthly basis, they would be prompted to fill a monthly reflection form where we would assess their engagement with resilience building behaviors, as well as their resilience and well-being levels. Throughout the pilot, the organizations provided non-monetary support to the health workers, which included data packs, and also in some cases, separate devices were given to the health workers to ensure that they are smoothly able to access the resilience messages. Now, what was the role of our pilot organizations? In terms of time commitment, the organizations work relentlessly to support the health workers through the pilot period, which included talking to them about the importance of engaging in such a program, making sure that they were onboarded to the application, providing them installation support, and being continuously available to troubleshoot any technical issues that they faced along this journey. Simultaneously, Dimagi also facilitated regular meetings with our pilot organizations, which provided a collaborative space for them to share their learnings from the field and also address any challenges that they were facing along the way. So what were our 2 pilot sites? Our 2 pilot sites were Chiapas in Mexico and Niger State in Nigeria. Partners in Health deployed this application with 20 health workers consisting of health auxiliaries, community health supervisors, and clinical health supervisors with an average age group of 25 to 34 years. The companion application in Mexico was deployed in Spanish, whereas AYGF deployed the companion app to 20 health workers, which included community health workers, nurses, and midwives with an average age group of 35 to 44. In Nigeria, this application was deployed in English. It is important to note that during the course of the pilot, we did see some dropouts from both the cohorts due to location changes and other unforeseen circumstances. Now let's get into the outcomes of the pilot. It is important to note that both the pilots had a small sample size. Therefore, the results that we will be talking about today are only relevant in the context in which these pilots were implemented. We are not making any broader claims about the outcomes of this application and the digital intervention. Before we get into the outcomes, it is important to understand what was assessed and how it was assessed. To understand the impact of the resilience messaging on resilience levels, we used a validated scale known as the Brief Resilience Scale. The Brief Resilience Scale is a validated measure, and we administered it using a self-report questionnaire. The Brief Resilience Scale includes 6 statements, and on a Likert scale, individuals need to rate their agreement to each of these statements. Some of these statements include, I tend to bounce back quickly after hard times. It does not take me long to recover from a stressful event. I usually come through difficult times with little trouble. On the other hand, well-being was assessed using the WHO-5 Well-being Index, where there were a set of 5 questions indicating how frequently the workers experienced each of these statements in the past 2 weeks. Now, talking about how these results can be interpreted. The scores on the Brief Resilience Scale range from 1 to 5, with higher scores indicating greater resilience. For WHO-5, the score is calculated by totaling the figures of the five answers and then converting it into a percentage. A percentage score of 0 representing the lowest possible state of well-being, whereas a score of 100 represents the best quality of life. Before I share the results, I'm not from statistics background, so for all my fellow colleagues here who are in the same boat, I would like to provide a snapshot of some of the terminologies that we will be referring to during this presentation. The first concept that we'll talk about is median, which refers to the middle value in the data set when arranged in ascending or descending order. We will also come across the term known as median score change, which basically means median value of all individual score changes calculated by the difference in score from the baseline to the end line. We will also talk about quartiles, which are basically statistical measures that divide the data set into 4 equal parts, where the 25th percentile represents the value below which 25% of the data falls. The 50th percentile is the midpoint in the data set, and the 75th percentile indicates the value below which 75% of the data falls. You will also come across a term known as the correlation coefficient, which we will talk about when we are discussing the app engagement. And the correlation coefficient basically is a statistical measure that tells us how 2 data sets are related to each other. It is a standard measure to measure the linear relationship between 2 variables. And the correlation coefficient ranges from -1 to +1, where a +1 would mean a perfect straight line in the positive direction, a -1 would mean perfect negative relationship, and any correlation coefficient that falls between -0.2 to +0.2 means that there isn't a relationship. So if you were to plot these 2 variables against each other, it would look like a random graph. All right, so let's get started. In this part of the presentation, we will talk about the change in the resilience scores from baseline to end line at an individual level for each of the organizations. Now, as you may recall, we measure resilience on a scale of 1 to 5 before the pilot commenced, which was at the baseline, and at the end of the pilot, which was through the end line survey. So, for example, if an individual was to score a 2.0 at baseline and a 3.0 at end line, they would have experienced a resilience score change of 1.0. What this graph here shows us is the distribution of individual changes for the AYGF cohort. In this graph here, the x-axis represents the resilience score change, and the y-axis represents the number of frontline workers who experience this change. So if you read through the graph carefully, you can see that 6 people had their resilience score change between 0 and 0.25. In a nutshell, this graph shows us that the resilience scores increased or stayed the same for 18 individuals and decreased for 2 individuals from baseline to end line, whereas the median score change was 0.42, indicating that 50% of individuals experienced an increase in their resilience scores by at least 0.42 points. I know that this is a lot of information, but we would love to hear from you. So as we go through more slides, please feel free to drop in your comments, reflections in the chat bot, in the chat box, so that we can take this up during the Q&A round. Now let's shift gears and talk about the resilience scores for the partners in health cohort. What this histogram shows us is that the resilience scores increased or stayed the same for 10 individuals and decreased for 8 from baseline to end line, whereas the median resilience score change was 0. A median resilience score change of 0 basically means that there was an equal number of individuals who experienced an increase and a decrease, which means that at an overall level, there was no change at the group level. So to summarize, during the pilot, we see that the overall resilience score for both the organizations increased slightly. And as we move ahead and talk about the impact of the messages on the well-being levels, I would be curious to understand from our audience on what they think can be some of the external factors that could influence resilience scores. So please feel free to drop in your comments in the chat box. Awesome. Now let's shift gears and talk about the impact of the pilot on well-being levels. As you may recall, well-being is measured on a scale of 0 to 100 for each individual before the pilot commenced, which is at the baseline, and post the wrap-up of the pilot, which is at the end line. So to help you contextualize, an individual with a well-being score of 40 at the baseline and 50 at the end line would have experienced a score change of 10. For the AYGF cohort, out of the total number of individuals assessed, 7 individuals either maintained the same well-being or showed improvement, while 13 individuals experienced a decrease in their well-being levels. So additionally, the median well-being score was -16. A median well-being score, which is negative, suggests that there was an overall decline in the well-being for this group as a whole. Now, when we talk about PIH, out of the total number of frontline workers who were assessed, 7 of the well-being scores for 7 individuals either were maintained or showed improvement. However, 11 individuals experienced a decrease in their well-being scores. In this case, the median well-being score was -6, indicating that on an average, the participants' well-being scores decreased. Now let's segue and talk briefly about app engagement. So as you may recall, the companion application offered a set of 81 messages that were delivered through the course of the pilot, where health workers received 3 messages each week. And the way we have measured app engagement is by the number of messages that were read by each of the health workers. And in this part of the presentation, we will look at one pilot at a time and learn about the distribution of participants' app engagement. So if you will see this table, we see that by the end of the pilot for AYGF, 18 out of the 19 users read all the 81 messages. And for PIH, 50% of the users read messages between 27 and 57. As you can see, the app engagement for both the cohorts look very different, and which we believe is related to the context in which these pilots were implemented, which we'll talk about in the subsequent slides. For PIH, we noted that the correlation coefficient is -0.04, which means that the correlation coefficient is very low, and there was no relationship that could be established between app engagement and resilience change. For AYGF, the story looks a little different. So since all the health workers read the same number of messages, we couldn't analyze the relationship between messages read to changes in resilience. For both the organizations, what we see here is that there is no significant relationship between app engagement and these changes. And this is primarily because of the sample size being low. I will quickly summarize this part of the section by sharing some key takeaways. Like I mentioned before, both the pilots had a small sample size. So what the outcomes that we have presented here today are relevant only in the context in which these pilots were implemented. We see that for the cohorts combined, there was a positive change in resilience, and that is possible because the application, specifically the messages and the intervention, were designed with messages that were intended to improve resilience. Since we take a skills-based approach to resilience, it seems plausible that an application, this application could have helped improve the knowledge and skills related to resilience. For well-being, we see that the change in well-being is slightly negative for both projects. And as I mentioned earlier, this intervention was not focused on well-being. That is, there were no specific messages that were included in the application specifically for well-being. So the knowledge and skills which relate to improved resilience may or may not have contributed to the change in the well-being aspect of a person's life. Lastly, because of the sample size being small and the different contexts that play an important role, we could not establish a significant relationship between app engagement and these outcomes. Lastly, it is also important to note that the interpretation of key concepts like resilience and well-being is subjected to the various contexts in which it is applied. For example, we found that the term resilience is more commonly used in English than in Spanish, which may have impacted the responses that the participants gave. Also, the answers to these statements is very much influenced and dependent on the specific events that a person may be going through in their work or personal life at the moment. For AYGF, we saw that the reason why there was more maximum content consumption or message consumption was also because they had someone on the team with significant knowledge of CommCare, and a very interesting approach that they took was to analyze the data which was incoming from on CommCare to follow up with frontline workers to ensure that they were reading all the messages in the application. For PIH, they had a slightly different approach. They used WhatsApp for regular engagement, but had less frequent one-on-one meetings. As you recall, the companion application also used the functionality of pop-up notifications to remind the users whenever there was new content available. And the PIH cohort faced some technical difficulties with the reminders application, due to which we believe that frontline workers missed receiving these push notifications that could have hindered their engagement with the application. Overall, we saw that there was a positive perception of the program. The frontline workers found the application easy to use. They also felt that the organizations cared for their well-being, and that this program is to support them manage their stress levels better. From anecdotal feedback, we learned that the messages proved to be really helpful for the frontline workers and provided them with very tangible steps that they could take in their day-to-day life to combat their stress. Particularly, the frontline workers liked the messages on meditative practice, connecting with their loved ones, and also some self-care techniques like having regular water, getting sufficient sleep, including green vegetables in the food that they ate. The frontline workers also provided very useful feedback on the application, which included the functionality of allowing them to note down their thoughts, which is journaling, and also marking messages as favorite. This brings us to the most exciting part of our presentation, where each of the pilot organizations will be sharing their learnings from the field. And as you go through this presentation in the chat box, please share one key challenge that you think organizations and implementers face while implementing resilience building interventions. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A block to post your questions that we'll take towards the end of the presentation. With this, I would now like to invite Christina to walk us through the experience of the PIH team.
Thank you, Tanya, and hi, everybody. Well, in Mexico, the pilot was set up with an in-person kickoff in which participants were provided with work cell phones and introduced to the application. The in-person surveys were completed 3 times, at the beginning, 3 months in, and after 6 months of starting the pilot. And this, as Tanya said, the team stayed in touch with the participants in between the surveys with regular WhatsApp messages. That was one of the things that we made different, but it was because of the context that we have. The feedback of the messages of the health workers that we had were that the majority of them felt the messages were relevant to their day-to-day, and the 92% of the people were reported that they were already implementing strategies that were thought in the application. For example, many of them started taking time in their work, they like just to breathe, or as Tanya said, get some water, get some snack. That sometimes with the daily work, they forget that. We all forget that. 92% of the health workers felt also supported or accompanied or seen by the messages, and shared some messages with their colleagues, some friends that were not of the organization but were partners in their job. and also even with family or their significant others. Most of them enjoy the time that like each week that they tune into the app and have this time for themselves. Many of the health workers also wanted that the content were a little bit more interactive, to be able to have some favorite messages so they can come back easily, or maybe a place to annotate messages or share with that. So they like the idea of adding images or videos to the app so they can like be more interactive with the content. The main factor that contributed to the success of the pilot in Mexico were that they have work phones instead of their personal phones as a working tool. And this came inseparable with the application, which certainly impacted the health workers' well-being and the usage of the application. They mentioned the big impact of being able to separate work and personal communication, and they were really grateful for this project to like gave them this possibility. Also, the WhatsApp messages to all the participants will, and the occasionally in-person conversations, and also the surveys help remind the participants to stay engaged and feel supported with the app. If we didn't have this, maybe the participants will be like more far away from the app and the continuity of the program. The project team had a good relationship with the participants, and this definitely influenced on the reception of the pilot. So this personal one-on-one of the team members was really important for us. Something that we don't really use were the incentives, the material incentives. So this may not have motivated to use the app, but well, this is since they were only provided in the beginning with the phone, so that was like enough incentive. And also the gifts were given at the end of the project, some like a graduation a graduation present for them. The next one, please. The challenge during the pilot were mainly logistical challenges, translation of parts of the app, participants remembering the passwords, the lack of push notifications in some phones, and this decreased the participant usage of the application during the pilot. Also, it's the context is that we usually don't use this technology because of the context that we live in. During this year, we are starting to have internet in rural communities. So we like usually do not have phone signal. So we usually do not use phones or either other apps. So it's not that common for us. How we address these challenges that were the team continuously work on translation, offer password changes to the participants, and send these WhatsApp messages to serve as a bi-weekly reminder of the application. Some participants also didn't feel that they had time, or they forgot, or they felt that it was more work, that it used like something else that they need to have and not like a benefit. So this leads that they were not really motivated enough to regularly check the app. But based on our experience and the insights that we had, we will absolutely recommend the using of this digital tool. At the beginning, our hypothesis and the feeling of the participants and the team project was we were a little bit skeptical of real world impacts because of an application. And after we see the results, we are pleasantly surprised. A digital tool will not be the sole solution, we know that, but it will help the health workers both to learn to support themselves and feel backing from their organization. The health workers receive resilience information that they will not have otherwise through the work. Also, we learned that to maximize effectiveness and impact, in-person components will be needed to be added, such as some group activities based off the messages or the lessons that we are having in the app, and STEAM-like referrals to accessible and long-term therapy, for example. Also, our team realized the importance of the relationships among the participants and between the participants of the team project. Their ability to talk through their challenges and feel their feedback was valued, was a big part of the project success. And also the survey gave us, like the team, a good picture of the top challenges that we were facing, and to propose different approaches to the health workers' well-being. The positive comments that we had of them about the application and messages made us feel really hopeful in the potential of digital tools to improve the health workers' resilience, that we at the beginning were not so hopeful. So also a big highlight of this project is that we now have future plans, included conducting an organizational wide diagnostic of factors that cause stress or challenge the resilience of the whole team. So this will help us a lot in order for further interventions in Mexico. And just to finish, I will add like some anecdotal insights that were shared by the health workers. It's true that not all the health workers were always positive. They had recommendations to get better the applications. Also, they knew that this will not work for everybody. As I said, not all of the team is used to use the phone or the digital life. But we think that it's a good solution. And many of the comments were positive and thankful for looking forward for next steps. So we are like really grateful because of this. And just to end, I will want to make a special public appreciation to all the participants on the project that they help us with this. And also to Anna, that she is the project leader in PIH Mexico, that she couldn't join. And without them, like the participants, Anna and the Dimagi team, this it will not be possible. So thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina, for sharing those valuable insights. I think some of the anecdotal insights were my favorite. It was really exciting to see what the health workers had to say about the program. With this, I would now like to invite Joe from the AYGF team to talk about the learnings from the AYGF cohort.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Warm greetings from Nigeria, AYGF. It's a pleasure to be here and to share our feedback and learnings from the Resilient Message program that we're contracted to do. First and foremost is to say that that the health workers found the content useful with some suggestions and tips, very helpful, and then to also apply to their day-to-day routine. And the feedback from the message program was generally positive, and with, of course, from the beginning, some suggestions for improvements into the project. We had one or two adjustments into the strategies that we're adopting in Nigeria and on the project. Also, that the health workers initially had difficulty understanding the terminology. You know, after the working group sessions and then contextualizing the message and all that, we still had challenges with some of the health workers understanding some of the key concepts on the messages that were sent. So we had to look into that to be able to scale up and increase performance in terms of the services that was provided. And also that most health workers express interest in engaging in similar initiatives in the future, and we recommend the project to their peers. In fact, during the course of the project, we had so much, a lot of health workers indicating interest to be part of this project. But unfortunately, we had to select just a few, which is 20. But again, one of the feedback is that while in the project, we encourage some of the participants to ensure that their peers and their colleagues also benefit from the messages that have been sent. Next slide, please. All right, so there were some challenges in first getting the workers to open up to give us some information at the beginning. And with the strategy we employed as to creating a WhatsApp group to have daily conversations with them, and then visiting them in their health facilities, and to also have one-on-one conversation with them. We're able to surmount that. Again, is that the Resilient Message program had positive impact on the organization, with workers being in better moods and more productive. It was clear that most of the health, let's say 90% of the health workers engaged had improved. Even testimonies from their colleagues had improvement in the way and outlook to their work and their daily routine. And also that we had as part of the takeaways that based on changes in resilience and well-being plans or initiatives can be implemented to provide support to health workers, such as remedial steps in case of increasing burnout. Next slide, please. All right, for us, as part of feedback and takeaways, is that we ensured proper advocacy from the beginning of the project, just so that we can secure the buy-in of the very relevant stakeholders that into the health project and into the health programs, because this we're implementing in community, and we had to ensure that we carry the relevant stakeholders along to ensure that there will be no hindrance to the project, and which we're able to do. And we also incentivize the health workers through monthly stipends for data and transportation, as the case may be in some places where they have to maybe move to one community, from one community to another, or come to work and all that. That also helped. Training and retraining. At the beginning, we had thorough training done. And in the course of the project, we were also using the platform, the WhatsApp platform, to ensure that all of their questions, technical guidance was provided through a retraining process to the beneficiaries. We had monthly supportive supervision, which was one of our major strategies to ensure that we go to see the health workers every month to get their feedback on how they have been faring on the project, and to also get their challenges and profile solutions to them. We had constant communication, and then we had organization support, even though we had some little hitches at the beginning, but when everything was fully settled, we got a very robust organization support from the organization to be able to carry out the project. Then we had the headers testified that the messages they received was applicable to their daily life and daily routine, and that was one of the major feedback we got, and that gave us the boost to continue and then ensure that the project is concluded. Next slide, please. All right, in terms of challenges, this is not too clear, but I'll try to see how I can squeeze. Of course, increased interest to participate in the pilot by Frontline Workers will be part of the first listening. What this means is that we had other health workers who were indicating interest, and that became like a competition in a way. And what we were able to do at the right-hand corner, you could see the mitigation approach we had to use to ensure that we encourage those participating in the project to ensure that those who have also had interest can be probably debriefed or given the message to read so that they can also benefit. Then planning the budget upfront to accommodate inflation and we had some little bottleneck, like I said from the beginning, in approval, disbursements of funds and all that. But once our team was fully ready and the message was communicated properly, we were able to surmount that. One of the challenges we had, of course, in the state where we are implementing in Niger State is a very we have a lot of hard to reach communities here in Niger, and most of the communities are rural with very poor network reception, and so some of this became a challenge at a point. But what we did was to encourage the health workers to ensure that they always find a way to where they can get strong network and receive their message. They already know the timing. All they do is when the timing is ripe, they will go probably to where the network is strong and then get their messages and then sit and read. A poor power supply, which is another challenge. But here we were able to provide some power banks. Those are some of the facilities and health workers who had some of these serious challenge to be able to assist in ensuring that their phones are always on to be able to participate and get benefit from the project. Of course, fuel scarcity affecting transportation and general election. At the point in Nigeria, we had the general election, which was in the middle of the project. Activities has to stop. We already had planned some of our activities in terms of supervision and all of that. So that led to reducing our schedule and probably putting us under more pressure to ensure that we conclude on the project. We had fuel scarcity, which is one of the challenges we also faced. We had budget for monitoring and supervision, but as a result of that, we had some of these this particular challenge affecting the team going to some of the wards to visit the health workers at some point. We have to mitigate that. We adjusted the timeline and then so that we'll be able to cover for the loss of time. Next slide, please. All right, generally is to say that the messages from part of the takeaways that the messages are easy to comprehend, the app is easy to navigate. These are the feedback we got from the health workers. The message are timely, and although with delays in some cases, which we're able to solve during the course of the project, the time for receiving the message is convenient because we have to set the time to the convenience of each of the health workers to ensure that they can be fully ready to receive the message and read. Is that the resilient message program is timely and relevant. This pilot came at a time where the health workers are actually in need of this kind of innovation and intervention in terms of building their resilience. Timely, and the program was easy to run, and we recommend, and they recommended that it can, if it could be scaled up, and the health workers were fully motivated during, before and even during the project, and we also utilize all available digital tools to ensure that we engage the frontline health workers and to get them to achieve or get something out of the project for the benefit of their lives. Next slide, please. All right, some health workers attested that the Resilient Message program has helped to inspire them to put in more input into their job. So overall is that if you look at those that were participated in the project were better motivated to work, to continue to put in their responsibility to the organization, various organizations in which they work, than those that did not do. And so this was one of the insights. Also that the health worker reported that the message read on a daily basis had helped to boost self-worth and manage their homes. For instance, their spouses and children have noticed that they have improved. So apart from building their resilience to work, also in terms of managing their homes, was also improved. The health worker reported that they became better equipped and emotionally than the rest of their colleagues while participating in the 6 months program. So basically, I don't know if there's next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so basically, these were the insights, challenges, and feedback from the frontline health worker on the Resilient Message program. And at this point, my colleague, although not with us now, is Mr. Jab is also on the call. And for other colleagues in AYGF who had made it possible for us to achieve this feat, I want to thank everyone. And then also the Dimagi team, just like the other person from PIH said, the Dimagi team made sure that we are on our toe working, ensuring that we attended all the fortnight meetings and then checking on the team to ensure that all is well. And we would like to thank the Dimagi team for that opportunity. Generally, I just want to thank Johnson & Johnson and everyone that has made this project possible. We look forward to any scale up. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Joe, for presenting these learnings. These are really valuable insights. And specifically, I really like the point where you talked about the supportive supervision and how the AYGF team had monthly meetings to get all the health workers together and also sort of reiterate the learnings that they were having through the course of the program. And I think this was such an effective strategy to sort of help them reiterate what they have learned through this application in their day-to-day lives. So reflecting on these strategies shared today, we would love to hear your reflections in the chat box on which of these resonates the most with you and why. And also just to reiterate, if you have any questions about the learnings or are curious to learn more, please drop in your questions in the Q&A box so that we could go through them one by one during the next part of the session. Essentially, the learnings from both these pilots as well as our own research of the wellness apps gave us the hope that a digital tool can be leveraged to disseminate resilience building resources that can be accessed by frontline workers. We leveraged the feedback from the pilots that we got from the field, which was to include more content, have an improved design of to foster more user engagement, expand more digital workflows to create an improved version of this application. The outcome of all the feedback that we got is the WellMe application. The WellMe application is a self-directed mobile application which has been developed for frontline workers and takes them through a resilience journey to learn and practice essential resilience building skills. Through this journey, they get access to short courses, practice activities, and additional learning materials that has been created and validated by a resilience expert. I'll quickly talk about the design of the WellMe application. The WellMe application has something known as a Learn module, which includes evidence-based learning materials. The Learn module essentially uses the 82 messages from the Resilience Message Program, supplemented by additional content validated by a resilience expert. The Learn module includes short lessons, including journaling prompts, which was a feedback that we received from our from the field. We also have short quizzes that could help the users reiterate the concepts that they have learned. And in addition to that, there are short self-report surveys to assess the resilience and well-being levels on an ongoing basis. Next up, we have something known as the practice menu. And the practice menu allows the users to practice specific skills mapped to specific resilience building behaviors that are proven to improve resilience skills. Essentially, the practice menu also includes a repository of multimedia, which can be referenced by the frontline workers to learn key skills, with an idea that multimedia content also allows better content absorption. The feedback that we received from the field was that we need to build the application in a way that also allows more flexibility of app usage. So the application workflow on WellMe has been designed to provide maximum flexibility to the users. And some of these features include the ability to mark content as favorite and also search content based on a user's preference. So for example, if a user wants to only go through the content related to stress management, they could search that content and they would be able to view content specifically related to how to manage stress in their day-to-day lives. Next up, we have the My Profile menu, which enables the users to track their progress through the application. Lastly, we have something known as the Help menu, which basically is a repository of frequently asked questions that will help them understand how to navigate the application, how to use the application for maximum benefit, and also includes a customizable repository of resources for additional mental health support. At present, Dimagi is conducting a beta testing program for WellMe, and the beta testing program essentially allows participating organizations early access to the application, enabling them to test WellMe in real-world settings, evaluate its impact, and share feedback. If you would like to know more about the beta testing program, please write to us at wellme@dimagi.com. I would also request Charles from the Dimagi team to share the email ID in the chat. Great. With this, we come to the Q&A section, and I will now hand it over to Charles to go through the questions in the Q&A box, and let's get started.
Thanks, Tanya. Thank you, everyone, for the questions that we've put in the chat box. The first question is from Somidev. The question is, how can we interpret the data on score change? If the median score change was 0.42, is that good? Is there a baseline score that we expected? I'd like to invite any of the panelists to first go ahead and answer the question.
Hi, this is Liliana. I know that Sarah had a chance to put her thoughts in the chat, and I want to echo what she said. Agree that this is a really great question, Somidev. It's important to know whether this change is something that's valuable. It's actually pretty hard to answer this question right now. I think typically what we would look for is a benchmark that says this is like an average resilience score for individuals who work in a similar location. And we don't really have that external benchmark to look at to be able to say whether the starting or the ending baseline scores are comparatively good or bad. But what we do have is the categorization of scores based on the way that the brief resilience scale is evaluated. So the low resilience score would be the range of 1 to 2.99, normal 3 to 4.3, and high 4.31 to 5. And since it's only a 5-point scale, a change of 0.42 actually could be enough for someone to move from one of those categories to another. So I think in terms of whether this is a good score compared to a general population, might be hard for us to say. But it is a significant enough move that we could go from one category to another. And I think that's something we can look into further with our analysis of the data. Happy for others to add on.
I would like to add something on that. Well, at least in PIH Mexico, we think that we will never have like good or bad results. They are just results because we are human and we are people. So it's difficult to us to measure like that. It's more like for us is just that we have more information of things that we need to address. So I will have like a different point of view in that, just to like a different approach of the results, at least in the site, or at least like from HR, that it's like my job position though. So I will just add that.
Thanks, Liliana and Chris, for answering that question. Next up, we had a comment from Toby saying that it would be cool to correlate how long was spent contemplating each message by timing form submissions. I think that's a great comment, Toby, for us to contemplate and to look at how much time was spent on each of the form submissions. And I think that's a great feedback. Next question is again from Somidev. In case of having journaling features in the application, were the health workers concerned about who would have access to reading these at the back end? Would any of the panelists like to answer?
I can give this a shot, and PIH and AYGF, please feel free to drop in your comments as well. So one of the feedback that we got during the fortnightly check-ins that we conducted was the ability to have like a notepad built in the application where they could journal their thoughts, their feelings as they went through their day-to-day lives, and also the key learnings that they had while going through the resilience message program. And this was a feedback that the health workers shared with the pilot organizations. In the companion app specifically, this feature was not available. We only developed this based on the feedback that we were getting from the field. Honestly, in all honesty, we don't have enough evidence right now to say about the concerns in terms of the anonymity, but there are definitely checks and balances that we can include at the back end in the application to ensure that these responses are not saved. And so we are able to maintain the anonymous aspect. But I would love to hear from the AYGF and the PIH teams in case the health workers were concerned about the anonymous aspect of the application.
Thank you, Tanya. I can add from the PIH side. I think that it was a concern in some of them, and what we made to address it is that the information was like just the leader of the project knew the names of which were the people that say that because of the user. The rest of us, even me, we don't have like the information. We just have numbers of the users, and we don't have like this link. So yeah, that helped us to address that. And also to make them feel more confident of the information. Yeah, and we sign also confidentiality papers, so like they feel confident that we are not going to use that information in other ways, just the pilot.
Thanks, Tanya and Chris, for answering that. Again, great question. The next one is from Omatayo.
Okay, sorry,
Yes,
Charles, I don't know. Okay, thank you. Just to also add my voice to what Christine also said. For us, in AYGF, we really did not have any challenge as to the anonymous content of from the health worker, basically, because they were very much interested. And of course, there was a consent form at the beginning of the project. We also developed a consent form ensuring that they sign and ensure that every information that we they will give will be published, and they agreed to some of these things. And also Dimagi helped through the fortnight meetings we're having with the organization to ensure that some of the feedbacks from the health workers were reintroduced into from the baseline, midline, and end line. Was like an improvement from what the improvement from the baseline was that, sorry, the end line and midline was like an improvement of the baseline based on the feedback from the health worker. And this helped as we progressed. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Job, for adding the context. Thank you. The next question is from Omatayo. The question reads, this is a great job, well done to the team. Just curious to know why the variance in the age difference of health workers from the two study pilots, Mexico and Nigeria. The age difference of the health workers from the two study sites.
Well, let me start with that. In Mexico, most of the people that work in PIH have that age, so it's like the middle age. There's difference between the health workers and the supervisors with some age, because most of the health workers are from the community, and the supervisors, most of them are from other cities. So yeah, usually the community health workers are older, but it's 30 years, 34 years, not more than that. So, well, that's the side of Mexico.
Thanks, Chris. Would anyone else like to add in anything? Thank you. We can move into the next question. This is from Jennifer. It would be interesting to hear feedback from patients and if they felt their care was improved throughout the HCC's engagement with the program/learning materials. From an HCC perspective, showing positive results from well-being with positive patient care results/outcomes will encourage their willingness to engage and put forth effort in program. This would also encourage the employer/facility to allow time for their HCCs to participate. I know it was a longer question. I can read that again. It would be interesting to hear feedback from the patients and if they felt their care was improved throughout the HCC's engagement with the program/learning materials. From an HCC perspective, showing positive results from personal well-being with positive patient care results/outcomes will encourage their willingness to engage and put forth effort in program. This would also encourage the employer/facility to allow time for their HCCs to participate.
Yes, I can add on that. We don't have direct feedback from the patients, to be honest. I can't say that the patients say this, but the health workers providers told us that they feel more comfortable to attend or are more like feel more patient or feel more like have more wellness to attend the patients. So I don't have like the direct feedback from the patients, but I have like these insights of the health workers that said that they feel better and like more ready to attend some difficult situations or sickness though.
To add Dimagi's perspective, Jennifer, I think this is again like a great idea. However, from both of the pilot sites, this was not one of our core hypotheses right now. But essentially, like I understand where you're coming from, and definitely this will be a useful metric to sort of assess in the long run.
Okay, just to say that on this question, for us, we have quite a number of evidence in terms of video interviews and conversations with the frontline health worker, and which I'm sure we shared in some of our reports, where we had the beneficiaries attesting to the impact of the project on their life. So it would be good to share again if you don't have it, but that of course is in the right direction at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for answering that question. Next one is from Thomas. Will future updates of the software enable non-Android devices to use the app? That can be a limitation to implementation for many.
I can jump in. This is Liliana from Dimagi. Thank you so much for the question, and I appreciate you flagging some potential implementation gaps because of the platform that the app works on. Unfortunately, I don't think the companion application or the WellMe application will be available on iOS. Actually, the CommCare platform is designed for low resource settings where typically the cost of a smartphone that someone is able to purchase is only basically like the cost means that someone will have an Android device. They would not be able to purchase an iPhone in the settings where our technology is typically deployed. And so the decision to have the app on an Android-only platform is something that has been made intentionally based on the type of user that we anticipate having. And that's just at a platform level for CommCare, where the app has been built on top of. With that being said, the resilience message program that's inside of the app is available online. It's a public, free to use, adaptable resource. I'm sure that Jamila could provide a link, or our team could drop it in the chat as well. But I think there's no limit to where those messages could be disseminated through other apps that might be built on an iPhone or iOS platform.
Thanks, Liliana. I think those were all the questions that we had as of now. If there are any more questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Charles, for moderating the Q&A section. Great questions. And I'm glad that we were able to have a productive discussion. And definitely thank you so much for sharing your inputs in the chat, as well as the questions in the Q&A box. With this, I would now like to invite Ashish from the GIGH team to talk about a few exciting announcements from the Resilience Collaborative community.
Thank you, Tanya. I hope you all can hear me. Great. So thank you for your patience, everyone, and thank you for the lovely presentations, the insightful detail that you've all shared. I'll just take a minute. Just want to acknowledge that on behalf of the George Institute for Global Health, we are honored that we can take on the host responsibilities from the Johnson & Johnson Foundation. So thank you, J&J. We will have a formal interaction or a session in the coming days, but we just wanted to take a bit of time, less than a minute. The intent really was to come on and just say hello, and also to say that the good work that has begun by the Johnson & Johnson Foundation and you all as the community, that needs to continue and it needs to flourish. And we see our role as GIGH to be able to facilitate that journey, which also means that you all will be the people who will be shaping the pathway, the roadmap. And one way in which that could happen really is to have, to continue these conversations, bringing ideas and suggestions. The newsletter is one of such spaces, your space. And we just want to re-invite you to be able to share ideas, giving you some ideas here on the slides. You know, if you want to feature your work or your organization, any news or insight you reckon is useful that relates to resilience, or any other ideas. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'd like for us all to continue the dialogue, and we are here for that, to facilitate that. So that's our primary goal here. And if this is of interest to you, please feel free to drop a thumbs up or some fun icon on the chat box. And just want to acknowledge the teams who've shared today. Great job. We hope to see you soon. Back to you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Ashish. With this, we come to the end of today's presentation. Thank you so much for everyone for joining today's session, and to all our panelists who shared these valuable insights with us. If you would like to connect with us to understand more about how the pilots were implemented, discuss any implementation insights, or also know more about the WellMe application and the beta testing program, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and engaging in today's discussion.